Good morning and welcome to a new little series of meditations on progress. Progress is a word that can mean more than one thing, and I try to cover those various aspects of progress in the next few days. And I suppose the place I think of whenever I hear about progress is the end of the book of the prophet Daniel, the last chapter, chapter 12. So I'm going to read from Daniel chapter 12 and listen out really for a few hints of various different kinds of progress that he expects in the future. Now, the last chapter of Daniel has suffered a lot from students of prophecy mining it for their theories, but it seems to me that what it's basically about is the times of the end and after, going on to the resurrection, and it's really about our times. Daniel is told to seal up the book for his time because it wasn't ready, but I think we're meant to unseal the book of Daniel because he's talking about our times. So let me just read Daniel chapter 12. At that time shall arise Michael, the great prince, who has charge of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as has never been since there was a nation until that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered, every one whose name shall be found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars for ever and ever. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others stood, one on this bank of the stream and one on that bank of the stream. And someone said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream, How long shall it be till the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream. He raised his right hand and his left hand towards heaven, and swore by him who lives for ever, that it would be for a time, times, and half a time. And that when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things would be finished. I heard, but I did not understand. Then I said, O my Lord, what shall be the outcome of these things? He said, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined. But the wicked shall act wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But those who are wise shall understand. And from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1290 days. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1335 days. But go your way until the end, and you shall rest and stand in your allotted place at the end of days. That's the English Standard Version, which I'm not really used to reading. I know this one better from the King James or the NIV. But in some ways, although the ESV is perhaps not the smoothest translation, I think they're trying very hard to get into something which reflects the Chaldean, so I'm going to try and stick with that. Daniel 12 sounds a bit confusing, doesn't it? A lot going on, angels or when men in white saying various things and so on. But I think one thing that is clear is that it's about the times of the end. And the times of the end mean, if you take Jesus seriously, the Christian age, the time from Jesus' work onwards. And some of the events that Daniel mentions clearly haven't happened yet. We haven't had the general resurrection of the dead and the glorification of God's people that you get in verse 2 and verse 3. On the other hand, you do have some events that happened within a lifetime of Jesus doing his work. The end of the daily burnt offering, when that stopped when the Jerusalem temple was overrun. The abomination that causes desolation, whatever that was, and there are at least 2 or 3 interpretations, they all happened around AD 69 to 71. So some of those events have happened then, some have not yet happened, and the time of trouble is what it's called in verse 1. And of course, in the book of Revelation, the time of trouble is the Christian age. It's the age when an uncountable multitude come out of the great time of trouble with their robes washed white. So I think the best way to read Daniel 12 is to admit that some of it is hard to interpret, but it's about our times. It's about the times of the church, from the time of the fall of Jerusalem to the time of the general resurrection of the dead. And the very fact that it's described as a time, times, and half a time, that is 3.5 years, a time, a year, 2 times 2 years, half a time, half a year. The very fact that that length of time is taken up time and again in the book of Revelation to refer to our times, I think is enough for us to say, okay, it's all a bit mixed up, but clearly Daniel has got to seal the message up so that it can be unsealed in our time, so that we can read Daniel 12 and get something out of it to help us live our Christian lives. Now, the thing I want to point out this morning is not most of the stuff here at all. I just want to point out that there are 4 kinds of progress mentioned here. In verse 4, we're told that there is progress in knowledge. Knowledge will increase. And the word for knowledge includes not just facts, such as you might have in a quiz, general knowledge quiz, but skills, know-how. There will be an increase in know-how and knowledge, in understanding. And it includes all of those techniques and technology that follow from the application of knowledge. And that is definitely happening, isn't it? We are seeing knowledge increase in that sort of way. The increase of technology, technique and skill in all sorts of amazing areas. Also, travel. Many shall go, or travel, traverse to and fro. The original meaning of the word progress, of course, was travel. If the king made a progress through your city, it meant that he travelled through your city. And we have seen that progressively through the last 2,000 years. The means and opportunities for travel have extended and extended. Unfortunately, it does mean that viruses can travel at the speed of a jet aeroplane. So travel isn't always good. We see mass migrations, which used to be over, say, 100 miles, now are made over thousands of miles. Travel has definitely increased, but sometimes that movement caused by war and famine has been at a great cost. Even tourism, one of the great industries of the modern world, is based on travel, and it makes people rich, and it also does the environment no good at all. So we have 2 kinds of progress there: progress in knowledge, progress in travel. But in verse 10 we get 2 other very different ideas about progress, and that is progress in virtue, or progress in godliness or virtue, but also a kind of progress in evil. Many are going to be refined, many are going to be cleaned, many are going to be led into righteousness, as verse 3 says. So there is some kind of hopeful progress, and people will change, and sometimes change for the better, and certainly change in their knowledge of God, because this is a progress in godliness. But there will also be a more dodgy kind of progress. A a progress in evil. The wicked will continue to be wicked. And the idea there is that the wicked will continue to earn condemnation. The wicked will not progress in any way at all, really, except in becoming more guilty. But you could call that a kind of negative progress. Now, this is very reminiscent of the parable of the weeds in Matthew chapter 13. And I've already done a little meditation on that. The one where Jesus says, let the weeds grow. So that at the end of this age, when there is the great harvest, the harvest of righteousness will be gathered, but there will also be a harvest of the wicked. And the image there is of the weeds being sorted out and burned, and the good wheat being gathered safely into the barn. And the image there, I think, is again of double progress. There will be a ripening of evil, just as there will be a ripening of godliness and faith, and the two will happen together. Now, many people have pointed out that human progress is a bit of a mystery, that we progress in some areas, but we don't progress in other areas at all. In fact, we sometimes go backwards. And so all our technologies are double-edged. When I was a primary school boy, I wanted to be a nuclear physicist because the future seemed to belong to nuclear technology. Well, it didn't quite. And that's turned out to be a very double-edged sword. But every technology is the same. Anyone who puts his hope in technology is a bit of a fool, because we have proved conclusively that almost any new technology can be weaponized and used to hurt and destroy, as well as be used for something good and helpful. We have become quite often the slaves of our technology rather than the masters of it. So yes, there is a mystery of human progress. So somebody said we have guided missiles, but we have unguided humans. The idea that civilization is on a steady upward trend is something only the most childish people can believe. Our material civilization has not yet led way to a humane civilization. But all of those paradoxes were baked in at the beginning. Daniel 12 tells us in simple terms that these paradoxes will exist. There will be progress, but it will be ironic progress, it will be mixed progress, and often very confusing progress. So the righteous may well progress in righteousness. The wicked may well progress in wickedness. Knowledge will increase. We will gain the knowledge of our techniques and our methods, but we will not perhaps become any better. This is how Daniel 12 can be reconciled with Ecclesiastes, which says there is nothing new under the sun. Well, there's plenty that's new if you look at the increase in technology, but there's almost nothing that's new if we look at human beings and our relationship with God. So this is the beginning of a series of meditations. I'm going to work in detail on some of this, I hope, in the next few days. But we live in a world which is progressing, but progressing in several different directions all at the same time. So we live by faith and not by sight. We recognize progress, but we don't believe in it. And that, I think, is the Christian attitude. Well, I hope that's not been too much or too confusing, and I hope to be a little simpler and a little clearer over the next couple of days. In the meantime, God bless you and keep you. May you enjoy living in this world which is progressing in such funny ways. Bye for now.